Good evening, everyone. And after that very, very sparkly and lively session, it's a little difficult to be up, isn't it? My panelists agree. It's a little difficult to be up, but as with all the sessions that we've seen or heard in the Cherry Blossom Festival, the Shillong Literary Festival, each and every session has had one common thread running through it, which is sustainability, concern for the environment, and our roles, the roles that we play or have been playing or should be playing in this particular very important thing that concern. So today, we are here for a session titled How Green is My Valley? And I have with me two panelists who are experts and who have spent their entire lives with environmental concerns. I have Bikram Grewal, who's a wildlife biologist with several books to his credit, and Dr. Rajkamal Goswami, a conservation scientist with a specific interest in the Northeast. To start off, what I will do is we'll take our session title and pose a question from it. How green exactly is our valley? Bikram, you first.
I don't think it's green at all, much that we would like to say that it is. And there are pockets of green in Assam and in Arunachal and other places. But by and large, it is not green. I mean, there are a lot of people who will disagree with me. But if we use the word green as we ought to use it, I don't think it exists at all. I don't know what you think,
I am
Raj.
among the one who disagree with him, but not completely because, like he told, green is a complex word, and if you look at the color green, then there is a lot of greenery around us, right? Especially when you land from any part of the country, anywhere in the northeast, all you can see is a carpet of green, green, green. But the way we are trying to talk about green here is more about how much sense it makes in terms of the richness of biodiversity, for example, or how many birds or how many mammals or how many butterflies are there, how much carbon it sequesters, because today we are talking about climate change. How much water is it sequestering? Is it allowing the water to run off, or is it holding off water and providing water to the communities, to the people at large for drinking needs, for producing hydroelectricity? You can see a big dam near Shillong. So that water is flowing from somewhere, and a certain part of the forest is tapping that water and allowing it to flow slowly. So are the green that we see around us providing all these critical services, providing all these very, very important things that are necessary for human well-being at large? So if we look from the concepts of biodiversity and human well-being, I partially agree with Bikram, and yeah, I mean there are certain pockets of green throughout Northeast, and if you compare it with the rest of the country, there are still a lot of green in the Northeast.
Why? May I ask you a question, Raj Kamal? Why is it in Arunachal or Meghalaya, now that we are here, why is it that a bucket, half a bucket of potable water at Cherrapunji, which has the highest rainfall, or one of the places which has the highest rainfall, costs 60 rupees? Why is it? If it is so good as that, biodiversity is there and climate change is not affecting us as the way as it should, why is it that you can't get a bottle of potable water to drink in the place which has the highest rainfall?
Before Rajkamal answers, just a little bit of context. While we've been discussing this, we've been having this conversation intense and somewhat confrontational as well. But since all conversations on this are good, I'm just going to, before Rajkamal answers Bikram's questions, you mentioned a lot of things to which Bikram asked you this question. Can you just kind of, for all of us here and especially for me, can you define or just kind of put in simple words the parameters by which you define green? And then we would be better able to understand his question. Yeah? So if you can do that for us.
Yeah, actually, I laid out the parameters in the previous comment
Yeah,
that
but
I
break it
made.
down a
Yeah.
little bit more.
So I'll be mostly looking at the richness. When we say richness in terms of species that are there. So for example, around Shillong, you see a lot of pine, but they're just one species of plant. For me, a good green cover or a good forest is where you have multiple species of plant at multiple levels. You have multiple species of trees, you have multiple species of herbs, shrubs, and then you have and those kind of dense multi-layered forests allows a lot of water to sequester. So the other parameter is how much water that a forest is allowing to sequester, tap, and then allowing it to flow and regulate. So ecosystem services, for example, is one concept which tells us how much benefit flows from an ecosystem. So here we are talking about forest ecosystems because we are talking about greenness. Doesn't mean that only forest can be a quote unquote good green ecosystem. There can be grasslands, there can be pastures, there can be like snow covered landscapes. Each have its own value. For me, the species richness, not only in terms of plants, but also the other species that it allows to thrive, like birds, mammals, butterflies, multiple species of insects, multiple species of invertebrates, um, reptiles, fishes in the water systems that a forest taps and regulates the flow, and also in terms of carbon that is sequesters, which helps us provide climate benefits and all, which helps regulate the climate, temperature, rainfall, etc. So those are the parameters that I define green as.
And to answer then Bikram's question, why does half a bucket of potable water in Cherrapunji cost 60 rupees?
Yeah, that's a slightly complex. I mean, if you go to people who have been to Sohra or Mohsin Ram, they understand the terrain of that landscape. So that's part of the southern slopes of what we see in the what we call this part is basically the Khasi Hills Plateau, and it drains. So in the northern part you have the Assam plains, the Brahmaputra plains, which is not as steep as the hills that you see in Cherrapunji, where it's almost like a wall. It's a 90-degree cliffs which drains into Bangladesh plains, the Surma Valley and the Sylhet plains. And there what happens is the water is not able to flow in the regulated manner that it's supposed to flow, and it's just a function of the terrain of the landscape. Of course there are like long term changes happening in the climate, in the forest types, and a lot of mining has taken place. So all those issues are there, but equally important is the terrain, the geography, the those kind of very geographical parameters actually.
Did it always happen?
Yeah, that would have.
Water scarcity during winter season has been there for a long time. It's not a very recent thing.
Yeah, I do remember water scarcity in Shillong, especially in winters from my time before. But if we have to kind of give ourselves, we hear conversations about climate change all the time. It's there. If we are involved, we are involved. If we are not, it's somewhere on the fringes of our consciousness that so many things are happening. This is what we need to do. This is what needs to happen. But somehow, not a lot of us are engaging every day in an everyday manner with this. So, what happens is conversations like this often remain with
Conversations.
no disrespect, the province and the preserve of scientists and experts. So, my understanding of this is could you kind of please tell us, just kind of, we all understand marks in India. Could you give us marks, on how, since this was a question, was this always the case? So on, say, key parameters of how fragile we are today or not, how well we are handling our conservation efforts, especially in the Northeast and Meghalaya, where were we on a scale of 20, 25 years ago? Where do we stand today? And where do you think we will be 25 years from now? I want both of you to answer this question because I know the marking system is going to be different.
Well, I think it's age beyond before beauty, so I'm going to start. Um, 25 years back, things were bad. How bad they were, I really can't tell you. But when he says that in Cherrapunji or in the other places nearby, water cost 60 rupees for half a bucket. I think it's not just a simple question of, that the slopes were like that. Things have happened. Deforestation has happened. And so I would say that things were bad, maybe not as bad as they are. If you want me to mark,
Yes, I do. Let's put numbers on things so
uh,
that we understand.
well, it was 20 out of, 20 is the total marking. Well, it was 6 out of 20. If you want to know now, it's, I would say, about 2 out of 20. Things are getting much worse, much worse. We are not even talking about other things like, quarry mining and other things, which is added to all of that. 300 trucks go to Bangladesh every day from Meghalaya. And if it's going to be 25 years from now, it's going to be -5, -6, if not more.
300 trucks carrying what?
Your dust from the quarries. You have Lafarge
Yes.
which do a regular thing and they pay you, the government, some money for it. But the illegal of various things it could be. And in this case, dust quarrying goes on a great deal in Meghalaya.
Okay, so Bikram has given 25 years ago, the situation 25 years ago, a 6 out of 20. Today, a 2. And looking ahead 25 years, a very depressing -5 or 6. Raj Kamal.
I am, I'll just quote, not quote, but I remember a scene from Satyajit Ray's movie, who is one of my favorite filmmakers in the world. He made a beautiful movie called Aranya Din Ratri, and I love that movie for various reasons, but there is one moment in that movie which I never forget. So some of you might have seen that movie. It's an excellent movie. If you haven't seen it, do watch. Highly recommended. So this people from Kolkata, three friends or four friends rather, who have traveled from Kolkata to the forests of Jharkhand to have a nice wild weekend. And that movie was made in the 60s, mid or late 60s. Um, and then they meet this again very urban woman which they least expected to meet in the wild landscape of Jharkhand, who have a kind of a forest outhouse, and they are like, they also came to spend the weekend there. And then they meet the owner of that house, who is an old gentleman, a Bengali Bhodralok. And they asked, oh, this is such a beautiful place, and he has a watchtower there. And they ask him, oh, like, this is a paradise for you. He tells, no, no, no. It's not what it used to be. If I remember from my childhood days, tigers will come here, deer will come there here, but today I don't see anything. So I think for every generation, it's a question of what they compare it with what they used to see. It's always a very depressing picture, and that, because this is exactly what we are talking today, what that old gentleman in the 60s was talking in the movie. And that's what I like about Satyajit Ray's movie also, that they are timeless. And they kind of resonate with what we feel today too. So I'll be a little more optimistic than Bikram, and if I talk about the situation in the Northeast of quote unquote green today, I'll give it about 12 out of 20, which is 25 years back. Today I'll give it around 8. And maybe 25 years from now, with the kind of conversation that I have seen here, it makes me even more optimistic actually. So maybe it will hold good at 4, 5, 6. A lot of new things are happening. A lot of young people are coming into talking about nature. I mean, the fact that in a Lit Fest, Cherry Blossom, Shillong festival, we have, like today we had 2 sessions dedicated to conservation of biodiversity, tells something about the concern that is becoming mainstream, what used to be very fringe concern. So I'm optimistic actually, to be very honest.
Do you disagree?
I do, but
Yeah, okay. All right. So thank you for that little ray of hope and drawing from Ray as well. But there is this question, conversations, of course, are important. What other factors? You're saying, yes, of course, it's coming into mainstream conversation. We do see changes around us all the time. Little bit, we probably buy a little less of single-use plastics. We try and eat local rather than global. So we are little by little getting into these little things. But what I want to know is you've kind of you've still put us at 25 years now. You've still put us at a 4 or 5 instead of an 8 that you see today. So you're essentially saying even with all the conversations that are happening, that are coming into play, we would still have done that much damage to what remains. We'll still be, behind where we are today. What are the things that we do? We know it all, but still, sometimes it helps to put it in simple terms. What are the things we should stop doing? And I'm asking this to both of you. Two, what are the things we should stop doing, and what are the things we should start doing as individuals and as small groups of concerned individuals and also as larger communities, maybe? I'm not getting into policy here.
I think you should start by talking to children.
Okay.
Because children are the future of this country lies with the children, not with people like me.
But
Or-
Bikram, the children talk to us and they tell us that you've done a really bad job.
They
We don't know how to.
but they are coming up with some kind of solution.
Yes, they are.
They are saying, for instance, why do you want to cool your room, your air-conditioned sitting room, half an hour before you come in? Why do you need a big car when a Maruti 800 will do? So it is the small things. And how does it work? It works one man teach one. One person teach one person. And all they need to do is to spread the word around. And when you reach my age, which you will do eventually, is you become a kind of a cynic. But we have only 20 years left, 10 years left. What kya kar loge? Hum to mar jayenge. That's not the point. The point is that when you need 100 watts of electricity in bulbs for the whole house, why do you have 500 or 600 or 700? And we do it without even thinking about it. But if we start a small thing like that, by putting off some switches, by having a bucket bath instead of a shower, of using a smaller car, these things all add up. And the interesting thing is that it's all coming from young kids.
Yes, it is, because I've just recently witnessed or been witness to a conversation where 12-year-old quite effectively stripped a 40-year-old of his status symbol by saying, I mean, you drive an SUV, aren't you ashamed of what you're doing? And here was this gentleman who'd come in very proud of his new car, and it was just taken away from him in that one sentence. So yes, children of course are the future and they'll do their part. But what I'm worried about is we always kind of think they'll do this. What can we do standing right now, right here?
It's much closer than what we think it is.
Yeah, so what
you
can
know,
we do?
You know, in another 10 years or 12 years, all of Calcutta might be well underwater.
Yes, Amitabh has been telling us about that,
Amitabh
as
has
well
been
as
telling you about
other
it. Yes, so
scientists, and
all
that's
our
scary.
conversations on Sundarbans, where I stay
Yes.
for half the year, is on the rising waters. Are we doing anything? I mean, you talk to somebody in Calcutta, it doesn't even come close to his mind that such a situation could.
So, big cities often operate in bubbles. We talk of big cities as cosmopolitan centers of this, that, and the other. But I tend to think of big cities as bubbles. And this again leads back to something that we spoke of earlier in the day. What is it that a Calcutta or a Delhi has to learn from a Shillong or a Cherrapunji, or maybe nothing from Shimla, I'm sorry right now, but maybe a Gangtok, because they have a fabulous urban planning department that takes care of encroachment. So what is it that we can learn from smaller cities, because we live in our bubbles and we've come here and it's beautiful. This question is for Rajkamal, because you've talked of many things that we could.
Yeah, so cities, if I can use a metaphor, it's like this big bad python which is eating up everything which is everywhere else. So A city might look very green and it might look, take the example of Shillong in Meghalaya. It looks beautiful, it looks green, but often this most beautiful parts of the city, take Delhi also for example, the most posh areas of Delhi will look the greenest also. But they are the ones like what Sukanya and Bikram correctly pointed out, the densest bed of conspicuous consumption. Like they drive the biggest, costliest cars, they buy unnecessary things, and they are like driving most of the things that we happen. What Bikram pointed a very like a very drastic picture of what is going on with the biodiversity is actually not happening because the people living around those forests are destroying those forests. These are driven by consumerism, by demands, which are lying very far. And that is one of the most tricky, most complex issues that face wildlife and biodiversity, what we are trying to summarize as green today. So the cities have to start thinking about not just like what is going to happen within their cities. I mean, they have to look also beyond the cities. The kind of impact that they are having on the environment beyond. So for example, let me tell you, most of my work has been focused on Jaintia Hills area of Meghalaya. Unfortunately, many of people sitting here in Shillong might not even heard about the places that I have visited there, like some villages. So for example, there is one village called Artan, and it takes about 4 days of, like from the nearest place where the jeep can drop you, it takes about 4 days to walk and reach that place. And when you reach there, you see the forests are great. I mean, some of the best forests that I've seen in my life. Amazing, like animal, plant, bird, and butterfly diversity. Stunning. I mean, only in that area I've recorded some 600 species of butterflies. In the whole country, you have about 1200 known species of butterflies till date. So half of the species richness of all butterflies in the country is recorded there. In whole of Meghalaya, you have about 650 species of birds. The entire country has around 1150 species of birds. So you are sitting in a place where still a lot of biodiversity is still there. But when we talk in terms of benefits, they have to flow to people. Then we have to also talk about how many of those species survive. Because once the rare species can't provide the benefits that we talk about when we talk about ecosystem services and others. So, but these forests are really threatened by limestone mining, not coal mining. Everyone in Meghalaya talks about coal mining, but the real threat to the forests are limestone mining, are big plantations of betel nut. You see everyone chewing betel nut here. That is one big threat to the forests, I'm telling you. And those kind of demands are not driven by people who are living around this forest. These kind of demands are coming from cities like Calcutta, Bangalore, where I stay, or Delhi, where Bikram stays, or Shillong, where you guys are staying. And unless and until we become conscious about what we are doing, what kind of lifestyle we want to lead, uh, there is very little hope for biodiversity, to be very honest. But like I told, there are a lot of changes, positive changes that I see, and those kind of changes that I'm seeing hopefully will save some of these forests that we still see today.
I'll come back to you on that.
Can I?
Vikram, some good news, please. Yeah.
I'm afraid there isn't any.
No, there is
But
some.
let me just tell you, before I come to the good news, let me tell you
Thank
some
you.
more bad news. One of the biggest problems in the Northeast, and Meghalaya is very much a part of it, is the wild meat trade. You know, when people kill. Now, if you take a place like Nagaland or Mizoram, the forests were sparse enough. I mean, the people were sparse enough in the forest for the forest to regenerate themselves. Now, what has happened is that people have started coming from Assam, for instance, in the Karbi area, into Nagaland, and the forest cannot sustain it.
Yes.
You're lucky you see a crow. You see a crow, and by the time you look for it, it's all the way up in the Himalayas somewhere. So it's a wait a second. And the good news is there is always some good news at the end of
Yes.
the day. Uh, one of the great, on which Meghalaya is very much a part of, is been the success of a particular bird which all of you have heard of. It's called the Amur falcon. comes to India only for 10 days to 12 days a year. I mean, the migration is there towards the end of October, around the 20th of October. When it comes over Nagaland, over Meghalaya, where it has a kind of a locust which it feeds on, becomes fat. And then crosses India to the west coast and then flies the shortest amount it can over the Arabian Sea into the west coast of Africa. Then it goes down to South Africa where it breeds, has babies. When it comes back to Amur, it doesn't come back to India.
Okay.
So it's only a one way. It's called an elliptical migration. When I first heard of it, about 10 years back, I heard it from some Bengali engineers. सर यहाँ तो इतना मैसेकर होता है, अब आइए 10-10 हजार 12-12 हजार दिन में ये चिड़िया मारी जाती है. I said, how can it be 10,000 birds, 12,000 birds in a day? So I went there that year and I saw the killing. And the killing was about 25,000 birds all over that area per day. So what they do is they kill it and they sell it for 40 rupees. Now, because there's no refrigeration, they break the wings so it doesn't decompose. And then eventually they take it to the market, they sell it for 40 rupees and they earn their livelihood throughout for the year, for this period of time. The famous Amur massacre as used to take place. And so few friends of ours got together and we started going to various people. We went to the army, we went to the church, which is so powerful, 98% is Presbyterian. The church said nothing to it. Get away, this is a year-old tradition. Finally, in a series of happenstances, the chief of planning commission was coming. I went to him and this, that, and the other. And he went and told the chief minister of Nagaland, if you can stop this killing, I will increase your amount.
Okay. So incentivize
him. And then asked us to come up with various schemes.
Okay.
What do we do with the hunters who are losing their income? So can we convert them into... I'm very, very happy to tell you 10 years later that the killing is down to 0.1% of what
I
took
think
place.
that deserves applause.
So that is the only happy story I can think of, but I'm sure there are others.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. And one of the things we only have about 5 minutes left, 7 minutes left maybe. And Rajkamal, some good news from you. We've been hearing some good news from you throughout the day. So if you would share that with our audience.
Yeah, there are multiple examples, and because we are focusing on the Northeast,
Yes.
there are multiple examples, but I'll try to tell you of one example closer home, like in Meghalaya and in Chaintia Hills, where you find the most densest forest that you can find in Meghalaya today, the largest patch of forests. You can walk for 10 days, the forest won't get over. And those forests, unfortunately, were also the most threatened forest. Like I told, it's because of the limestone mining. And when I went there, when I wanted to start my PhD there, that's what I thought, that I'll be seeing like a lot of forest and biodiversity and all. But when I saw endless queues of trucks, like Bikram was pointing about, carrying coal, huge hills being stripped off completely for limestone mining. Big cement plants have come. You keep walking inside forest, you can feel the earth rumbling because of the big cement plants running. You can see the lights and see the sounds even when you are deep inside the forest. And then what we felt was there was a lot of like indifference among the people living there itself. You must have heard about the Lukha River, which flows in a place called Sonapardi, which is like when you're going from Shillong to Silchar, before Malidor, before you cross from Meghalaya to Assam, you see a beautiful blue river. So that is called the Lukha River, and that's where I used to stay, just on banks of the river. Big river, we can't even use the water for washing also because it was highly toxic. And mostly because of the leaching caused due to the limestone mining and the cement industries. People lost livelihoods, they couldn't fish there. And everything seemed like, and people didn't know what to do. And then we got together like local people. We walked for 5 years, and I'm very happy to say that today they have formed a committee of about 10 villages in that catchment of that river. They have stopped all kind of mining activities in that area, and they have petitioned the government to I'll ask the cement plants to strictly monitor their effluent discharge systems so that they don't allow any effluents to flow directly into the river, which was happening till now. And also they are not going to allow any new mining to start, which is a great news, to be very honest. And this is closer home. This is just about, if you travel for 4 hours, you'll reach that place. And mind you, they have also started one beautiful ecotourism initiative by the local communities there. About 8 villages have come together, and they have started a festival just like this called the Lukha Festival. The first one was held in 2019. Unfortunately, after that, COVID hit. So last year it didn't happen, but this year they again had in 2021. It was a huge success, and the tourism department is actually supporting them. And I see that in the next 10 years, there'll be a lot of local conservationists coming from that landscape, just like you see a lot of local conservationists coming out from Kaziranga these days, where conservation started about 3 decades ago. It takes time. It's not easy. Like Vikram told, it takes about 10 years from the hunting to decline from 25,000 to say 10, 12 birds. But it takes time. It requires engagement. And as long as young people, like what I see, like lot of young people today, when they start talking about these issues, government will listen.
That is a wonderful way to end the conversation. But before that, if there are any questions from the audience, anybody has any questions? Yes, the lady there. Yes, he's just getting that for you.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. So my name is Serene. I'm currently doing my master's in biodiversity and wildlife conservation. So both of you have been in this field for quite some time. So how is it that you've managed to remain optimistic considering how difficult situations can get? So what is your advice to someone like me who's just beginning her career in this field?
I don't know. I don't think I'm really as optimistic as you think I am. He is optimistic, he's younger. And no, I think the only way to do it is to check what the situation is, because you'll hear all kinds of stories. Some good stories, some bad stories. Unfortunately, the bad stories are more realistic, and but there's a lot of rumors floating around. There are a lot of lies being told by vested interests. You know, people who are in the industry of cement, of stone crashing or anything like that. So they will tell you better stories that nothing happens. There are people on the other hand who will say that things are actually much worse. So I think the first thing you should do is to make a make a fair analysis of what the truth is, and then take it on from there and see how you're going to handle it.
Rajkamal?
Yeah, a young person like you asking that question makes me very optimistic, very hopeful, because I can see that concern rising. I'm very honest with you. When I started my career in 2006, I could barely hear anyone talk about these issues. And today, here we are after like 10, 12 years. We are sitting in the center of Shillong having a conversation about forest and biodiversity, which I really didn't imagine. So things have improved far quicker than I ever imagined. And that gives me a lot of hope. And one of the other things which really pushed people to think about biodiversity, which was not a great thing, the COVID-19 pandemic. People got stuck in their cities, and they could clearly see that people who were not in the cities, in their villages, in their hometowns, they were much better off. They didn't really have to worry about food. I think in one of the sessions, someone was talking about, yeah, the French gentleman who runs a tourism industry. They took 5 kg of rice in the forest and bought back 4 kg, and they completely relied on wild edibles from the forest. I think those are the kind of things that people realized during the pandemic, and people who were stuck in cities, they were like they were starved of some greenness, of biodiversity, and that's when people realized that protecting this is really, really important, of how life can be if we stop some of the things that is going on. So city air became clean, rivers started reflowing, you could see rare animals inside the cities which people didn't see for 50, 100 years. You could see the mountains from a long distance, and that those things happened just within about 2, 3 weeks of cessation of what the blind, mad consumption patterns that we see in the cities. So there is hope. I mean, life is as resilient, as strong as we humans are. All kind of lives. Everyone wants to live. If you give them that space, if you give them that respect, they will bounce back. It's only on us how we decide to do that, and how long do we take to realize it.
Thank you, Rajkamal. Any other questions? Yes, there's a question there.
Hi, I'm Deval. I had a question which is maybe contrary to the discussion on the table. But is there a good marginal utility for quote unquote destruction of the environment for economic perspective, economic prosperity or growth or whatever? Is there, like, when you were rating it, that we were out of 25, we are 12 on whatever, is there a marginal utility where we can say that it is okay, suppose, and I use the term destroy very, very lightly. I don't mean destroy to hurt the environment or to cause deforestation for economic or basic prosperity.
So the
Yeah,
balance between
just to break it down, marginal utility is a term in economics, and economists like to use these very nice terms to, but the main idea is that you reach a equilibrium where the demand and the supply kind of balances itself out, and there is not much pressure on the system because the demand supply curve acts in a way which, so market is considered to be very neutral and very democratic.
Efficient.
Yeah. So there is a term in biodiversity and environment which is called sustainability, which kind of is what like economists like to call as marginal utility. That point in the curve. So basically, like I told, each part of the nature or the natural ecosystem has a carrying capacity or has a way of replenishing itself. So for example, fishing, like this kind of wetlands are very, very good examples. So you have a fish stock, and if you keep harvesting a fish beyond a point where it can replenish itself, then it becomes a bit of a problem. And who will suffer? The fishermen are going to suffer. So in many wetland systems nowadays, which are run by the community at grassroots level, you can see that they have a period where they stop fishing for some time, so that the fish replenishes itself. At macro level, it's very difficult to come up with such numbers, but scientists and economists are coming up with, like for example, the Dasgupta Commission is a great ray of hope. We interacted him about 2 months back, and they have come up with some very good models and theories which kind of addresses this question that you have asked. Hopefully, uh, but unless governments at country level or at state level adopts this as policies and then strictly implements them, because we have a lot of policies and implementation is always a big problem, it's difficult to see these things happen on the ground. But already calculations have been made and people are talking about already, like at what extent, at what level we should consume or grow.
Do we have any? Thank you for that. Do we have any more questions? We have a question. Yeah, gentleman there.
Hello. First of all, kudos to everyone who has organized this and very important topic.
Mary, sitting right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, a big clap
Big
for
round of
Mary,
applause for Mary,
because,
actually.
I guess this kind of topic we really miss. We have great conclave here and there, but nobody talks about environment. Nobody talks about the biodiversity. Nobody talks about the pollution, which is killing each and every person every day. So, in context to that, I would like to ask, like, our civilization has taught us 10,000 years of civilization of India, and it has taught us that we need to preserve our culture, we need to preserve our forest, we need to preserve our biodiversity which is available. But modernization has bring destruction to it. So I would like to know some opinion, like living the life of our civilization, which has taught us to preserve our biodiversity. So is it right time for us to realize that what our ancestors did, we need to go back and follow them? So I would like to find some opinion from both of you, if you
Well,
can highlight.
you know,
Thank you.
what you are talking about is so, I mean, wonderful in the sense if you could follow it.
Right.
But we have so much pressure on us, pressure of economics, pressure, peer pressure, pressure of children. Which school do you want your son to go? Which job do you want? Which car do you want? What colored house do you want? Do you want a cement house? Do you want a wooden house? These are the things that are just throwing everything awry. If you are saying that we should go back, our ancestors didn't worry about all these things, it's all fine. But in today's world, can you realistically think that you can do without these pressures? Can you? I'm asking you a question.
Right,
Can
sir.
you?
If you ask me, definitely in context to the environment I'm living right now,
Yes.
I'm having a great pressure to
You
accept
are.
life in life.
You-
But of course, if the environment changes, I will be also changing my view on this.
Good point. No, no, very good point. Um, you will be changing it, but how long will it take, and
Yes, sir.
will it keep in pace with the kind of other pressures that the environment then faces?
Right, sir. So of course, as the pressure is there, but I would like to see an environment or a society which really cares about our environment.
We all do.
And we work together, because if we don't
We
involve
all
everyone,
we have to.
right, sir.
We have no choice.
Right, right.
We have to play with everybody and take
Definitely, sir.
everybody along.
Right, sir.
If you have nothing to add,
Just one
yeah,
point.
please.
Like he told very correctly, we have to be the change. So, for example, I decided not to have kids, and even after 10 years of, so particularly when I come to Meghalaya, when I go to my field site, everyone asks, uh, "Bacha mila," like that is the word they use in Meghalaya because they feel God gives the kids. And it's a very difficult question to answer. They, oh, कितना साल हो गया शादी को? 10 साल. Oh, कुछ problem है क्या? But I mean, so you have to face all these things and you have to take this in strides. These are not easy decisions to make. It will start at individual level, but I can see a lot of people making these conscious decisions. Among some of the people whom I admire, like great people, great intellectual thinkers, and these kind of changes is ultimately going to start becoming a movement. I'm telling you, people are already doing a lot of things like going back to the nature. In Europe, it's becoming a big trend these days. And slowly, slowly, we are learning fast here in India also, which gives me a lot of hope actually.
With that, I think to answer your question, the last gentleman, and to kind of sum up, till policies are, let's say, keep pace with what is required, till implementation happens in the way it is meant to be, rays of hope and of change remain with communities, with individuals, with stalwarts in the field, and with young people like our friend Sirin there and you as well. Just keep talking, keep the conversations on, and people like Mary keep calling experts, engage in conversations, and hopefully our valleys will remain as green as they used to be.
Thank you, speakers. Now we'd like to have Mary Kurkalang, the creative director of Shillong Cherry Blossom Literary Festival, handing out the mementos.